I will go ahead and introduce our next session, which is Creating a Culture of Lifelong Learning, presented by Jenni Troutman. Jenni is the Director of Products and Solution with AWS's Training and Certification. We've heard about the Great Migration, we've read about remote workers' resistance to return back to the office, and much more. Jenni will be speaking about the workforce needs in the US and how we can meet their needs. Please give a warm aloha to Jenni.
Aloha. I have an amazing skill, which is when I meet someone for the first time, 10 seconds later, I've already forgotten their name. So in case there's anyone out there that also has this brilliant skill, I'll remind you, I'm Jenni Troutman. I'm responsible for the products that AWS Training and Certification puts out. Is it coming up? AWS Training and Certification aims to cultivate hundreds of millions of cloud-skilled practitioners, and we do it by partnering with all of you, by partnering with governments, with educational institutions, nonprofits, businesses, and even individual learners to bring cloud skills, programs, and experiences out into the market. I'm really excited to see all of you here today because I'm super passionate about how we collectively can build these skills and really foster continuous learning over time. Because when we think about digital transformation, it's not point in time, it's not something that's happening right now. It started long ago and it's going to continue. And if people are going to keep up, if businesses and governments are going to be able to innovate over time, we have to think about how people continuously develop their skills throughout their lives. So if you're here, it's because you know cloud is transforming businesses. But the reality is it's the people that are making that happen. And for them to do that, they need to have the skills and capabilities and frankly, the desire to go out and do that. And we need to lean in, and we are, wherever we get that opportunity, to give people the opportunities to build those skills. So how can we do that? How can an organization do it? How does AWS do it? How can you? I think it was mentioned earlier, AWS is super data-driven. And so I always ask the question of, if I'm going to lean in on this, why? Why should I care that much? And the reality is we've done a lot of studies lately to really understand what's going on with workers, what's going on with people out in the world, and how are they feeling. And with COVID, we've done some new studies to understand how might that be changing. What we found is we know businesses had to accelerate their transformation, right? They've had to accelerate their move to digital with COVID. We've been talking about that for the last hour and a half, and you've probably had previous conversations. But the corollary to that we found is that workers now feel like they need skills they never needed before. And 85% of workers feel like they're going to need skills to just do their current jobs that they don't have today. And they're nervous. 2 out of 3 people feel like they're getting left behind. It's not even thinking about the next step in their career. It's just thinking about how they're going to do their current job. They don't have the skills, they don't feel like, to really be able to be successful. And you may have heard this phrase called the skills gap. It's been in the press, we've talked about it for years. It's big and it's real, and it's challenging for all of us. In fact, we face it at AWS as well. It's very hard to recruit the workforce we need. And I imagine as you're thinking about how you're going to transform your business, finding that workforce that has the skills to do it today is challenging. And the skills gap is only accelerating. So the most recent study just went out and talked to 12 countries Now, it's the 12 that tend to be the most advanced in adoption of digital, but 12 countries representing about 20% of the global workforce. And in those 12 countries, it's estimated that in the next year, we'll need 174 million more people with digital skills than we have today. 174 million in 12 countries. That's like a problem that seems unfathomable, right? What are we going to do about that? Well, the good news is we also found in this study that people want to learn and grow. And so we can start breaking into that 174 million by helping the people that are already employed in our businesses today. In fact, when we do that, those people are much happier in their jobs. Companies that invested in training their workforce said their employee sat went up 80%, and their retention improved by 84%. So people aren't getting the skills and running and trying to find the next best high-paying job. They're wanting to grow their career. They're at a place they want to be, not always, but overall. They're at a place they want to be, and they want to learn and they want to grow, and when they see their organization investing in them, they stay. Now, this is a different stat, right? I just said 84%. Now, why am I throwing 96% up? What we found is when you go even further, beyond just saying, hey, I'll train you on what you're doing today, but I'm actually going to make you marketable. I'm going to invest in certification that tells the world that you have the skills you have today. They're even more likely to stay. And we did this study very specifically because a couple years ago, we were working with some large organizations that recognized they needed to build skills. They wanted to train their people. But when we said, you need to not just put them in a 3-day class and then assume you're good. Like, you need to actually make sure that they can do what it is you're setting out to help them do. And to do that, you need to get them certified. That is the validation that they have it, because you don't just go to a 3-day class and get certified. You have to actually be able to build, architect, develop, whatever it is you're getting certified for. And they said, no, I don't want to do that. I can't do that. Because as soon as they have that certification, I've seen the studies. When people are certified, they make higher salaries and they can wave their hand. Like, I can't hire certified people. I can't find them. So they're going to go and they're going to make more money somewhere else. So we partnered with a third party and we said, hey, help us do a blind study. Find out, because it's going to be really tough for us to convince people to get their people certified if this is really what's happening. And our partner went out and they did a blind study, and they surveyed companies that did invest in certification and in different certifications. And what they found was that those that invested in AWS certifications saw 96% higher retention. I can tell you we were thrilled to get this result back because we could go back and say, here's the proof. They're not just going to leave. They're going to see that you are making them more marketable. You are helping them in their career. You're investing in them heavily. And as long as you provide them the experiences then to now go use these skills that they can show they just built, they stay. And they actually encourage other people to do it. All right. So training people, we know we need to, right? There's 174 million plus that need it. And they'll stay if you do it, many of them. I mean, you have to know there's always exceptions. But what does it do for the business? Well, when you're thinking about cloud adoption, you can't do it without skills, right? You can't accelerate your innovation if you don't have the people that can do it. And so we also did studies to say, hey, what are the outcomes? And we talk to customers about it all the time. We say, what are your business goals? What are you trying to achieve as an organization? And then we track it. As they get people trained, as they hit milestones on the skills they're developing in their organization, how are they now tracking against their cloud goals? And what they found is 91% are better innovators. They're actually innovating faster. They're better able to serve their customers. And 90% saw an increase in the productivity of their workforce. That's not even to mention all the cost savings that are realized as kind of the stepping stone to just get started in cloud. But to be successful, and achieve these outcomes, it really starts with everyone in the room. If you're a leader of an organization, you have to lead from the front. That's what we were hearing earlier, right? Was you have to be visible and say, this is what we're going to do, this is why, this is the value, and then you have to walk the talk. You have to be able to make the investments in your team. You have to give them the time and space to learn. You can't say, hey, I want you working in your office 60 hours, and then, by the way, go spend another 20 learning, right? You have to give them the time and the space. And then you have to give them the opportunities to demonstrate how great they are, what they've learned, and that they're going to bring your organization along. And you have to do that from the front. Recognition is key. If you're an individual, I think we've all probably sat on webinars where we opened it up, listened for 30 seconds, and went and did email. I hope I'm not the only one that does that. That's not getting skills, right? That's checking a box. It has to be a commitment that you believe what you're doing is going to improve your career, and so you invest the time and the energy. So it's two-way. Organizations need to invest in people, and they need to make that visible, and people need to then invest their time so you can grow your careers and demonstrate how great you are. So this is what Brian Kirkland at Choice Hotels did. So Choice Hotels is a lodging franchisor. They have hotels all over the world, more than 7,000, more than 40 countries. And in 2018, they decided they needed to innovate to improve the experience of their hotel business owners who were trying to run a business, and also the people, the end customers who were going to stay at their hotels. And they started with their reservation system. They had a 30-year-old monolithic application where they did releases once a year, and it was very difficult to do any kind of change. And so in 2018, they decided to move that to a microservice architecture and cloud. But they didn't quite know how they were going to achieve it. And Brian recognized it as the CIO that what he needed to do was he needed to bring his organization along. He had 500 IT professionals who were quite happy in the jobs that they had. And they were fairly resistant to learning a whole new way of working. And so what he did was he said, you know what, this is business imperative. We can't continue to operate this way. And so he partnered with AWS, and he said, I want to make it easy for people, and I want to give them choice. So we made available virtual training so people could take it from their office, from their home, when the time was right for them. He also gave them time. He gave them 20% of their time to dedicate to learning, so roughly a day a week. And he said, okay, we're going to get everybody the foundation. Everybody needs to get core training. But then we're going to make all of these different paths available to you, and I'm not going to assign you on one. I'm going to let you pick based on where you think you can add the most value to the company. And so he made architecting, how do you architect in cloud? How do you develop in the cloud? Security for people that really wanted to get deep in security, and even he went into very leading edge technologies and machine learning, artificial intelligence, and he said, let's make them all available. I know people aren't here to waste their time. They're going to go into the tracks where they think they can add value. And what he found was in 6 months, 400 of the 500-person organization were trained. He didn't tell them you have to do it by X date. He said, this is what's available to you, and this is the change we need to drive. And in 6 months, 400 of those people were trained. And 3 months later, they had 93% adoption of their technology that allowed them to continuously deploy software. So I don't know if you're familiar with this technology, but it wasn't relevant in their old world. But it was what took them from being able to do one major product launch a year within their technology space to several every week. 3 months after those people got trained, they had 93% adoption. And what they've seen since then and what they've reported is that they are innovating faster. They're getting feedback from their customers that the experiences are improved, particularly from their business owners who they have more direct interaction with. They've had cost savings. He hears people in the hallways. He was talking to us. He said, I hear people in the hallways say, are you sure that's the right instance size when thinking about how much compute power they needed? Maybe we could optimize. Stuff that his developers never thought about what it cost to do business previously. And he would hear those as hallway conversations. And now, by the end of, so this was 2018 when they just started and they wanted to migrate one application. By the end of 2021, they'd migrated 60% of their applications, and they're continuing on the journey today. And it all worked because Brian was willing to stand up there and say, this is how our business is going to go into the future. We can't be successful without you, and I'm going to give you all the tools and opportunity you need to build your skills and grow your career, and I just need you to take it and run with it. Is that enough to address the $174 million? Probably not, but it's a good start. If organizations start by investing in the talent they have today and showing them the opportunity and giving them that opportunity, that's a great start. But there's more we have to do. We also need to build the pipeline of future talent because that $174 million is just the growth in the skills gap in the next year. With it growing at that rate, we have to think long term. And I think Kim mentioned at the beginning of the day, that's what we do at Amazon. We're always thinking long term. So how do we make sure that we have a pipeline of talent for the long term? We do that by investing in education. And that's for everyone to do, right? Schools and educators are already in Hawaii starting to build technical cloud curriculum into their courseware. And they're doing it through programs available. So there's one called Amazon Future Engineer. Some teachers have already participated in this program here, where we help skill them, the teachers up, the educators up on the technology, so they can then bring it into the classroom and give their kids a head start. That's for K to 12. Also, Honolulu Community College is participating in a program we have called AWS Academy, which is bringing cloud and AWS concepts into higher ed. And it's a beautiful thing when people can learn the kind of foundational, the business, the functional skills they need in their education, and also learn those technical skills that they're going to need down the road that are helping them be more marketable when they get out of school. And then it's for the businesses to recruit those people. Because just having senior and mid-level talent in cloud is not going to set any of us up for long-term success. We have to also be recruiting in that young talent and bringing them along. And your middle and senior talent are the best people to bring them along. But you got to do it while they're there to do it. So those are the two largest sources of talent to address the skills gap. The people you have today and the people of the future that you can start bringing in and mentoring. And then the last is what I call the gap filler. We're all still going to be out there posting jobs that say, hey, I need somebody that's certified, and fighting each other for that talent. And that's okay. You know, those people need jobs too. And we can fill gaps with that. You're not going to have everything you need in-house, and particularly at the senior levels. But I would reserve that for the gap filler, not as your primary talent sourcing approach, because you're just not going to find enough people. All right. Culture of continuous learning. I've talked a lot about getting people skilled today. How do we keep them learning and growing and developing? There's a lot of components to it. So you have to not only be in front to start the change, you have to stay in front to drive the change. And you have to encourage people to continue to modernize their skills. I don't know if you've noticed, but cloud services are growing like crazy. The current ones are constantly changing in order to get better and faster. And there's new ones coming out all the time. in training and certification, we struggle just to keep the content fresh. I can't imagine what it's like for people that don't have that direct access to stay up to date. So you have to continually give people opportunity to grow and develop their skills. And so there's multiple components to learning. There's the, hey, what do you need right now to really go deep and get comfortable? Maybe that's a few intense days with an expert in the room where you can get hands-on. Make some of those available. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be virtual. It can be whatever way you want. But live with experts where people can ask questions and try and fail and try again. And you have to have the availability of people to learn at the self-pace. So take stuff when they need it, what they need, what they want. And you can't kind of sit there and say, hey, I'm going to put 100 learning paths and I'm going to change them every day, right? You have to find places that have that available and make it available so people can pick and choose. And then there are lots of education programs that will help you find and source new talent. And you have to let your managers know that all these things are available, because while it's super important for leaders to lead from the front, your managers are the ones that your workforce is talking to every day. And if a manager sits back and says, I don't know, I'm going to wait and see, I really need them to deliver this, I don't have time for them to go spend learning, it's going to stall. So you need to help managers understand what the value is of getting their people skilled up and what are the resources so they can encourage it. And also build their own skills while they're at it. All right, now I'm going to share with you some of the places you can go or you can send your teams to go to start to learn. It's not a commercial, it's just I'm most familiar with AWS training. We also there's tons of training partners out there that provide training. But when we talk about getting started, there is a lot of free stuff out there. Kim mentioned that we made a commitment to train 29 million people for free by 2025. I expect we're going to way exceed that, because we make as much as we can available for people to get the basics and learn for free on their own time. So send them to Skill Builder. They can get the foundations, they can get for free all the content and learning they need to get to the very first certification, Cloud Practitioner. And then there's also deeper stuff if people want to get hands-on in specialty areas and foster that continuous learning based on where it is they need to go. And then there are programs for organizations that want to put it all together. And Skills Guild is exactly that. Skills Guild starts with what is it that your organization is trying to achieve, not from a skills perspective, but from a business or organizational perspective, and then works backwards from that to say, okay, what are the skills then you need to achieve that? And then what's the plan to get you there? And that plan has 3 components. It's tailored, every component is tailored very specifically to your organization, but it has 3 components that we've seen time and again are critical to being successful with organizational cultural change. And that's getting excitement. So that's getting people engaged and part of the process, providing them what they need to learn, and then building change champions. And those change champions are really what are going to drive that culture change throughout your organization. They're going to lead the early projects, the early transformation projects, and they're going to be seen as the heroes, and suddenly other people want to be heroes too, and it moves everybody along. It's a very structured approach called learning needs analysis that says, what are the skills you need? Goes out and surveys people, figures out exactly what you have, and builds a path to that. All right, so there's a lot out there to do. There's a lot of people we need to train. What happens if we don't do it? Well, first of all, that gap is only getting bigger, and imagine if we don't touch those 174 million, it's going to be probably twice as big the following year. But also what we found is this vicious cycle. People get frustrated. If they don't see you investing in them, they leave, or they get stagnant in their role and they don't deliver. And it only gets worse, and what happens is you don't achieve your cloud goals. Adoption slows down, you get stalled. And in fact, Global Knowledge, a global training provider, did a study recently where they specifically went out and talked to technical people who had recently changed jobs. And 50% of those people cited their reason for leaving was that their company did not invest in them. They didn't help them build their skills, and so they left. So I don't say this to be, doom and gloom. It's just the reality. When you invest in people, they stay. When you don't, they don't. And so what I would leave you with is when it comes to cloud adoption, the biggest challenge is really not the technology, it's the people. And we all have a part in bringing those people along. When we think about businesses, it's investing in the development of your workforce. When we think about governments and educational institutions, it's also investing in the skills of your workforce, but also in thinking about how do we build that pipeline of talent for the future so that we can continue to grow and innovate and drive, frankly, the economy of the future. Mahalo.